Welcome back, everyone. Episode 52. Going to try something different, give you a little intro. I think this is what we should have been doing all along. We stopped it halfway through, but it's a little harder with the software we got now. But
We're making it
we
happen.
had, yeah, we'll make it happen. We had Dave Snell on, met him through LinkedIn, maybe a networking meeting, not too sure. But had a call with him last week. Man spent 20 years in the Navy, went through quite a bit of depression and anxiety and PTSD, and has been working through it since. He said he's about 50 years old now, so he's got some experience on us, and so I figured we'd have him on. He created a little methodology to get through depression and anxiety, and now one of his ultimate goals is to take that methodology and bring it to speaking events and stuff like this. So it was his first episode or first podcast, so glad to add another new podcaster on. Love that. It makes me feel really good, especially at the end they typically say that it was nice and easy. So if you are scared to hop on a podcast, come on ours first.
Yeah.
What you got to say about
one thing I liked about Dave was that he's not scared of talking about the uglier side, like suicide attempts and all that. I don't know if you guys could tell, but me and Trevor are very open about that kind of stuff because we think that stuff getting ignored is only making problems worse. So for his first podcast, I thought Dave did a phenomenal job. Really gets into topics, and he's great on keeping himself centered too.
Yeah.
He always brings it back to the original point, to the original question.
Yeah, we went through quite a bit. Stigmas, his methodology, suicide, building relationships, transition from the army, journaling, resources, finding your purpose. I mean, we went through it all. It was great. He would have fit in perfectly with episode 1, dude.
Oh, just about everything. Yeah. We were talking about purpose slam, like that was our first episode. Like how poetic is that? But no, I had a phenomenal time, and I'm really thankful for Dave for coming on.
Yeah, there'll be some resources down below in the description. We'll throw episode 1 in there. Give that one a listen.
Yes, sir.
It's nice to see where we were and where we're at now, like we said on episode 50. So we're still moving along, looking for guests, of course. So if you guys got anyone that fits this description and kind of fits into the guest profile that we have, send them our way, endsuicide.us. They can fill out a form and pick a time there. But if you're enjoying the show, like, comment, subscribe, and review. We'll leave that in the description. We need some reviews, start getting some more eyes on this. So if you like it, chances are someone else is going to like it. So if you can help us spread the word, that'd be great.
Yep. And thanks to all you guys for watching us too. You guys are awesome. We're super thankful for everyone that watches us, and we're going to be getting some sponsorships coming up shortly. So giant things to come.
Yeah, we are moving.
Huge.
We'll see you. All right, that was pretty loud for me, but welcome back, everybody. I'll make sure it's not too loud for you guys. We're back, episode 52. Glad we're getting this one done. I'm actually going up to North Carolina. Sister's getting married this weekend, so very excited for that. Well, we got Dave on. Dave, how you doing, man?
Well, enjoying it. I'm having a fun time with our conversation already, so I can only imagine where we're going from here.
Yeah. Yes, sir. How you feeling, Kev?
I'm good, bro. I'm glad you missed that hurricane coming towards you.
Yeah, and we're safe over here. Yeah.
I was like, I expect this to be like Trev just treading water the whole episode.
Floating down the street. But yeah, I'm feeling good. Great day. It's a little gloomy because it's supposed to be a hurricane. Work was a little crazy. They could say on the news, this hurricane most likely won't hit us. The chances of it hitting us are 1%. And there will still be a lady in Walmart buying 600 eggs. And I'm not over exaggerating. This lady was buying 600 eggs.
It's like COVID with the toilet paper. Oh my God.
That baffled me because anything can be toilet paper in a pinch.
Yeah.
Well, for soldiers, yes, everything can be. Us guys on the boat, we love our toilet paper.
And my wife ain't using anything but toilet paper, man. I'll tell you.
Nice.
But Dave, you said 20 years in the Navy. You were
Yep,
an
just
officer, so you had to go through all the you had to go through college. What'd you go to college for?
Georgia Tech, and I will tell you that I went straight for one reason and one reason only. The major did not matter, was to get a commission in the Navy.
There you go.
But I ended up with an economics major. I started out in engineering, went to international affairs, and unlike most guys, I wasn't on a scholarship. It was totally voluntary for me through my senior year or junior year, and then I got a guaranteed commission if I graduated. But at the end of about halfway through my junior year, I was like, I may not get this commission. I better have a degree so I can get a job. So I switched my major and minor from international affairs to economics. And it worked out just fine. I got the commission. I did just over 20 years active duty. And that was, 8 years ago, I retired now.
So you must have been listed a while ago, or
when when'd you go to college and when'd you enlist then?
Commission, bro.
91 to 95, I was at Tech, and I commissioned the day before I graduated. So 95 to 2015, I was in the Navy.
Ooh. Okay. Was it cool before 9/11? I hear it was pretty chill, but I know like peacetime Army is not the funnest place to be.
It's a mixed bag. It's a mix of I was on a ship for 3 years, 2.5 years, and it was a lot of fun. And I had a excuse me, I had a kind of a strange career path, and my cruises, my first 2 cruises were NATO cruises, so they were a lot of fun. Most guys were taking carriers over to the Middle East, through the Med and over to the Gulf, and they were doing a carrier ops off of Operation Southern Watch. Now, not my ship. We went and played with NATO. So these guys are getting 3 or 4, port calls. We got 18 port calls in a 6-month cruise. And because it was only one U.S. ship and a bunch of NATO ships, probably 6 or 7 total, 8 total maybe. And each time you pulled into port, one of the ships would be the host ship, and they would throw a party. And each port call, you got to get you had to do better than the last one. Got to do better than the last one. Got to do the whole 9 yards. So I drank my way through my first 2 cruises. And again, like we said before the show, I mean, I did this, really to escape, growing up. Well, I didn't grow up. And then I went to cryptology for 2 years, and that was, Kevin, you say, peacetime Army is not the funnest place. That was kind of a mixed bag, but it was not the go get 'em underway kind of ship life that I had before. I ended up having a medevac in 2002, which took me off the ships and back to cryptology. And that was post 9/11. So, life, it's a mixed bag, I guess, as I started, it's a mixed bag. Depends on what you were doing, who you were doing it with in the peacetime. And then the same thing coming out, depending on the command you were at post 9/11, it could be a lot of fun. I did some special operations time after being back in the regular Navy, if you will, on shore duty. And the Navy side, you can't have beer in the skiff. Soft guys. I want liquor in there.
Yeah. It's a skiff. Like, who's watching you in there? Come on.
And I get there's rules and there's regulations, and for a reason. But we had a lot more fun in the soft community than we did in the regular Navy. So again, mixed bag, and depending on where you were. I just had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's funny you say regular Navy, because that's what we say too, is just the regular Army. And my dad will ask me a question. I said, well, if I was regular Army, it would be this way, but I wasn't regular Army. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, you must have.
Sorry.
So you must have had some pretty cool parties with the NATO guys then, like from different countries and stuff.
He's laughing, dude.
No, we're not going there. This is.
Let's say yes.
Yeah, some of those will stay between us on over a beer, not on a podcast.
Hey, I like that. It must be a good one.
There's that old saying, the beauty of being my age, and I'm only 50, was there was no Instagram, there was no Facebook, there were no little cameras that you could instantly get your picture. So there's no evidence and proof of what we did. So we're good. We're going to keep it that way. And I can deny a story. I can't deny a picture.
Yeah, and that's funny because Jordan Peterson talks about that too. Now it's much more. You're walking on eggshells, like being a kid in high school. You're walking on eggshells because anybody could be snapping a picture of you while you're at a party or taking a video or something, and you're screwed.
Yep.
Could be game over. Yeah.
Same thing. We're going to keep that for another time.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But you went through this. We'll get into the methodology. You said you created it, right?
Again, I had I had a lot of fun in the Navy, but I had some bad times.
Mm-hmm.
I won't sugarcoat it. And in the April 18th timeframe of 2002, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I got medevac from my ship for wanting to put a gun to my mouth or to my head. I don't remember where it was. I was at a point where I called the doc on the ship. We were in Busan, South Korea. I said, "Doc, take this damn gun and get me out of here. I'm gonna do it if you don't." And he got me sent back to Yokosuka, and went through some therapy, and eventually I did attempt. I guess it was March when I left the ship. April I attempted, and it was some low points. And I had trauma as a child. I had trauma in the service, even pre 9/11. My going to the desert and supporting regular Army and SOF and Navy out there. I eventually, again, in 2002, I did attempt suicide. But I will tell you that after that, the Navy, and I assume the Army, I think it's the same for all the services. You're in a depression. We're going to give you meds. We're going to give you therapy. Oh, you're fit. You're not fixed, but you're fit. We can send you. You're good enough. We can send you back out to the fleet or to the infantry or to the fight. Okay, great. So I had a number of episodes where this was the case. I was depressed. They billed me back, put me on some meds. Okay, 6 months of therapy. Great. That worked out fine. And I always go back in my mind when I left Yokosuka, I went to the National Security Agency and I deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq from there. And I had an uncle who worked there who was key in getting me into some of the key billets I wanted to do. And he finally looked at me one day. It was probably end of 2004, maybe early 2005. He said, "I'm not helping you anymore. You have a death wish. You tried, you failed. You want someone else to do it for you." I said, I scratched my head and said, "You're full of crap. I don't know what you're talking about." And eventually, about 10, almost 15 years later, I was talking to my therapist here, who I was seeing during COVID, and she said, "You probably were." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Oh, that's pretty hardcore." And unfortunately, I've told him since, but he passed away earlier this year. My uncle did. But to your point, and I, sorry, I digress sometimes. Beginning of COVID, I was over 200 pounds, and that was a marker I'd said I would never go over again or ever. And I'm saying I'll never do it again. And I got on a weight loss program with an old boss of mine who runs triathlons. After he lost 50 pounds, he was doing them before, kind of mediocre, lost 50 pounds, and his quality of his triathlons went up. Qualified for Boston Marathon and etc.
Oh, really? He qualified for Boston?
At 60 years old.
Like, for those who don't know, that's a really high standard to get. That is not an easy thing to do.
It's like an 15-minute mile for a 60-year-old, I think, somewhere around that marker. And he did it. So he helped me lose a lot of weight. And I got interested in, okay, let me get back into running. and I started moving. And that's the first M of my 4M process that I go through every day. And I think about what am I going to do movement wise to help my body and mind. At the same time as I'm going through that weight loss, my therapist said, we're going to try a new treatment. We're going to get you off these meds eventually. We're going to get to the point where we're going to break through and you don't need me anymore. And that was the first time I had a therapist say, I don't want to see you anymore, essentially,
Yeah.
but for a positive purpose. And she
Oh.
tried me on neurostimulation, where they do a brain map to see where your brain frequencies are too fast or too slow. And there's alpha, beta, delta, and gamma waves that our brain is always operating on. And in a depressed or anxious person, which I have a mix of both, it's either going too fast or too slow from a middle ground. And she did that for 6 months. And along with that, she did what's known as a vagus nerve reset, which for everybody, I don't know if I'll explain, is the vagus nerve is our largest nerve and it touches every major organ in our body. And it's the control for your fight, flight, or freeze responses to trauma, to experiences. So when you get the butterflies in your stomach, that's really your vagus nerve, sending off a trauma response almost. I don't know if that's the right word. But we get into this when you have traumas, post-traumatic stress in particular, for example, your body's in this tense mode. It's always wondering, what do I do? How do I respond? And this protocol, kind of calms the vagus nerve so you're not in that mode anymore. So here are two things. Okay, well, I've got my movement, with my diet, my exercise, that has an impact on your brain and helps calm it. There's endorphins, there's cannabinoids, which help calm and slow down your excuse me, your responses to traumas. And then I've got this doc doing this technical thing to my brain and bringing me back to a calm, I kind of think of it as. And at the same time, she's looked at me and said, well, what are we going to do long term? And I'd always been interested in meditation. And I'd always thought, well, meditation is blanking the mind. Think of nothing. Well, the brain can't do that. It has to, don't think of an elephant is the lesson I learned. Well, the first thing you're going to start doing is thinking of an elephant, whether it's pink or, regular or dancing or, tuning its horn, whatever. Well, that's not it at all. It's about learning to calm the mind. Again, just like that vagus nerve reset is calming the nerve and your response. How can I use meditation to identify when I'm getting tense, when I'm getting upset, and just go, okay, the basic meditation method is focus on your breath. Just a simple breath, focusing on the inhale. And, I like to think of it as I think about it touching each of the hairs of my nose and going down into my lungs. And I think about a molecule. And it's kind of a Navy thing on the surface fleet. We try to think of, air through a gas turbine engine is a lesson that we have to learn on some of the ships. And okay, well, and then the same thing coming out. And just that one breath, your body will start to relax. And if you can start to do it over time, your body relaxes a lot easier on just that one breath. So there's three, movement, mind, meditation, and they all come back to help each other. Meditation will affect the mind and the body. So movement affects the body and the mind. Okay, so we've got a little interaction here. But then I started looking at, okay, well, I've got 3 M's. I've got these 3 things, but it means absolutely nothing to do my movement and get up and I run every day or at least 6 days a week, in the gym 1 day a week, sometimes the same day I run. I'm always meditating and I'm always thinking about what's going through my mind. But if I don't have a purpose, Simon Sinek calls it your why, then what is the reason you get up to do any of this? What is the reason I get up to come in here to do this podcast, to engage with anybody, to study a new lesson, gain knowledge, or to improve my body or my mind. Well, you got to have meaning. And it just kind of, it didn't happen overnight that I put this together, but I finally realized, hey, there's an interaction here. These three work together, but on the basis of meaning. The foundation is the right word. And if you don't have meaning, these other three fall apart. There's no focus to, okay, why am I running? Well, I'm running to help my mind. I'm running to help my body, but I have an ultimate goal. And you have to have goals. You have to have that end state, not just an ethereal, I'm doing it for my body and my mind. Well, I want to have something tangible. And in my case, we were talking about earlier, it's a marathon and eventually a triathlon, maybe an ultra. I don't know. Having those four interact has helped me go from traumatic response, short-tempered, drinking a lot, not working out, fat, to taking it from what Will Wheaton called, and Will, I can talk about in a few minutes, is he had a speech that he talked about you can exist with mental health problems or mental illness or mental fitness. I prefer mental fitness, or you can live with these things. I'd rather live than exist and just go through the day for the sake of it. So I've kind of gone a while there. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me, or I need a drink too. Sorry.
No, you're good. It's funny that you bring up like you need the purpose for it all, just because. I mean, first off, that was our first episode.
That
if you
was the
haven't
first
checked
thing
that
I
out.
thought of,
Yeah.
though. The first
Yeah,
one.
that was our first episode. For the listeners out there, that's kind of what triggered in my brain, because when I was getting out, I was getting med boarded from the Army, and I'm sure it's like an 8 to 12 month process, and I was doing it during COVID. So
Yeah.
picture
And
that.
I tell you what, through my 20 years, especially in 2002, I thought I was going to get med boarded out for mental health issues, especially post 9/11. We can't have this. Well, guess what? I survived, but it wasn't really living again. It was existing.
Yeah.
Not
Is there
living.
that stigma in the Navy too, where like if you do try to get therapy, it's like you're damaged goods or whatever?
Well, yeah. When I got sent back from Yokosuka, or from Busan to Yokosuka, I got sent over from my ship. I went to the Desron, which is our next higher echelon, like an HHQ for you guys, I think, but an operational command in and of itself. And, I kind of got these side glances. Oh, that guy's a little sick. That guy's got some issues. And there were a lot of guys who were supportive, who said, hey, what can we do to help? But there were still, I think, the older guys, especially in the surface warfare community where I was at the time, it was a little bit of, the stigma was definitely there. And that's another topic I can go on. I'm working, in my thinking and doing these types of things and developing this methodology is to help break that stigma, talk about it. And I appreciate you guys doing this, because it's really what it's about is understanding. And what I found in my discussions with folks, guys and gals, young and older, it's all there. Everybody has these thoughts. Everybody has these issues. My dad will probably pop me upside the head for using the word issues, but we all have something going on that we're afraid to talk about. Well, why? Just do it. Just share.
Yeah, and that's what we noticed too, is it's just so many people just need someone to listen. Like even when I'm working at Home Depot as a garden associate, so many people there just need someone to listen, and I end up talking to them for 30 minutes about whatever they want. It's not even about anything that they could buy at Home Depot. We'll just start talking because we're not talking and we're not listening. There's no one to go to listen because everyone's so focused on themselves. No one wants to. We're having this discussion with Bert too, Kevin. No one wants to, quote unquote, help somebody if they're not getting something in return.
Yeah.
But there's no better feeling than helping someone without that's giving. There's no better feeling than giving out help and getting nothing in return. It's one of the best feelings is when I'm helping someone out and I'm not expecting anything from them. If they give me something, great. But I know that when they leave my presence, that I've helped them with whatever they were needing to talk about at the time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I was just thinking of a lady on LinkedIn I just connected with up in Richmond, Ann Moss Rogers, who does. I'm waiting for my T-shirt that says, essentially it's listen, use your ears to help end the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big piece of it. So yeah, to your point, Kevin. Yeah, there is a stigma in the Navy. I think that's kind of coming down. I was a little bit more open about talking about mental health towards the end of my career. And I just finished in February was my last month. I did 19 months back as a contractor, which I told myself I wouldn't do again, but okay, I did it. And it was really funny because there was a retired 06 who I think it was last September actually. He went around and it was September being Suicide Awareness Month, and he was going around, hey, I just want to make sure everybody's doing all right. Suicide Awareness Month. I was like, yeah, I get treatment every week. And he looked at me and goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, I attempted suicide. I went through this treatment. I did this mental health or this vagus nerve reset, neurostimulation, and I move a lot. He goes, I never knew. Like, yeah, because you made fun of what we do. What happens?
Yeah.
You made it a joke. But I'm not going to be the guy who just goes, yeah, boss, I'm fine. No, I'm going to tell you what's going on.
Right. And
This is not.
While I was getting out, that's what I was saying. It's during that 8 to 12 months, I was just searching in my head for a new meaning. I knew it was coming. I knew I had to do that. And on top of that, I just got divorced too. So like I was starting again from ground zero. And that's what was happening is I started going to therapy because I had nothing to lose anymore. And in special ops, we had the security clearance. So if they had any reason to pull your clearance, they would pull it. And that's no one would go to therapy for it because they thought therapy was one of those reasons. And I didn't care because I was getting out. They already said they're done with me. So I'm going to therapy every month and coming back to our shop and the whole hangar, telling everyone, yeah, I'm going to therapy. Or what are you doing here, Trevor? I'm going to therapy. And finally people started trickling into therapy because they knew that they could.
Yeah. I tell you what, I came back from Yokosuka to Fort Meade, went back to cryptology, and I'm at the National Security Agency, and I'm talking to my new skipper. And I'd just been re-read back in. I still had my clearance. I just didn't have access anymore. They'd read me out, okay, because I was going through treatment, not inpatient, but I was on limited duty. Okay, great. And I go to the skipper, and she looks at me. She goes, "Okay, well, what's the story? How'd you get back here? You had just backwards and forwards between cryptology and surface warfare." And I said, "Ma'am, I've got to tell you, because of the nature of what we do, I am on, antidepressants." She's like, "Oh, well, we need to do a whole investigation. We need to figure this out and find out if you can have your clearance."
Why is no one going to get treatment? No, I don't know. Weird.
And I looked at her. I said, "Ma'am, I just got read back in because the SSO said it was fine." Well, I don't agree with that. Geez, it's really not your call. Well, it really is. I'm just kind of facetious here, but it was just kind of like, you're the last CO I'm ever going to tell I'm on this stuff. Then,
yeah.
Now, I got into some higher classification stuff where they said flat out, we need to know, and it was more of a, I hate to use the blackmail answer, but everybody knew I was on the stuff. It wasn't a secret. But it was more of a, okay, it was they made it more of, oh, well, if you were on a higher dose, then we'd take your clearance. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm on it or I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, what difference does 40 milligrams make? They're going to take your clearance? Like,
yeah. I mean, I've made no bones about my mental health issues. And again, I like the term mental fitness now. I don't like the word mental illness. Whether you define it or not, however you define it, I'd rather be physically fit and mentally fit and start making equivalence between the two of those. and illness and fitness. But that's my Dave Snell opinion on that. But we can go down that path later if you want to.
No, it's remarkable to me that her reaction was just this like knee jerk kind of like you're doing what the military says that you're supposed to, but
Yeah.
then you get this kind of reaction from the skipper of all people.
Yeah. Now I was thankful. I'll give Don Rumsfeld some credit here in 2006. I think I was out in Hawaii. I think I still have a copy of the memo, and it's changed since. But he changed the SF-86 questionnaire to say, look, if you're getting mental health treatment for anything other than domestic abuse or use of alcohol or drugs in particular, I don't know about alcohol. So he changed it so it wasn't as much of a stigma to go get the help. You weren't going to lose your clearance because that's always the fear. Oh, they're going to take my clearance. And so, truth in advertising is my dad was a cryptologist back in the 70s and 80s into the early 90s. And back then, it really was at the National Security Agency and the Navy cryptology, at least. I'm assuming same for the other services. You go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, you're out. Your clearance is pulled. For whatever the period of time, I don't know. But it really was a threat of losing your clearance. That changed over the 90s and into 2000s. And now, obviously, we've got to break that stigma where you guys need to forget about the history and realize today you need to get the help.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be such a big problem if you taught us how to deal with it. That's the thing. You teach us all this crazy shit,
Can't do that.
and we got to go through this, and this. And for us, we had that 6-week training of how to prepare for war. But you never trained us once on how to come home after the war and be okay with what you went through. And on top of that, we go right back to work that Monday. Doesn't matter what day you get back, you go right back to work. So I wouldn't care that you would threat my security clearance if you train me properly on how to deal with it, because then you could say, look, we trained you and you still can't do it. I mean, those people, you train us how to run, jump, whatever, and if they can't do it, you kick them out. If you train me on how to be mentally fit, there wouldn't be a stigma because you've taught us how, and it would still be a little iffy, like going to therapy, whatever, but it's
I think there's a sea change, if you will, in how to do it. I'd see a couple of organizations who are making trips out, in particular to the Army bases, and trying to. Her concern is veterans, but she said, "Look, I've got to go back I got to go upstream." There's an old Desmond Tutu quote of, "If somebody keeps being pulled out of the river, continues to be pulled out of the river, why don't we go upstream and see why they're falling in?" And she said, okay, well, we have this veteran, after we get out of the service, why don't I go back to before you get out and start teaching you how to deal with traumas, depression, stress, anxiety? How do we go upstream like Desmond Tutu suggested? And I appreciate that she's doing that in one particular lady I'm thinking of, but I've seen a couple of organizations try that. And the fact that even, mindfulness, meditation, whatever term you want to use, that's being integrated into some commands, but it's really a piecemeal project, if you will, because it's not a concerted effort on the part of the forces.
Right.
There's no service directive saying we will engage in mindfulness, meditation, movement as a means to help our mind and get over that. So I see people get pulled in because they have a network of people who say, "Hey, this girl or guy came in, taught us mindfulness," and it proliferates. But it's not coming down. It's within the commands themselves, and that needs to change, I think. If anything.
Makes me think, can they even change that? Because we still have to fight wars.
Well, I think you can if you get to, Trevor, your point of how do we identify that something is wrong? You
Yep.
know, too many times we get into this macho world, and look, I got into it. I was all about killing bad guys and
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
strong versus the weak. And look, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a physically active guy. I was a nerd. I was a spook. I was a guy who worked at NSA and did these things in the rear or kind of middle ground. I was never out forward. I never kicked down doors. But I got into that mentality working with those guys. And okay, well, they don't want to talk. They don't want to identify that something's wrong. You know, look, I'm not going to tell anybody never to drink, but I drank like a fish when I was in the Navy. Like I said, I mean, we'd have a beer in the skiff and kind of just hang out. We worked hard, we played hard, but alcohol, we've tried the not desensitization, I guess is the right word, maybe, to alcohol and not making it as big a part of everything we do, every party that we're at. But that's we hide all these issues in alcohol for many decades in the Navy and the military and in general. And we kind of need to say, okay, we've taken that out. And here's, I guess I'm going somewhere with this. And what I recollect is two things. We used to have base bars, the O Club, the E Club.
Oh, yeah.
You could drink on base, but then they got rid of those. And they're like, oh, go drink out in town. Well, what happens when you're out in town? You're going to get in trouble with the local police. You're going to get DUIs. You're going to get these problems. And then you wonder why we're having retention issues. Well, you're kicking everybody out because they're drinking, because they're working hard. And then what happened to the days when you could have it on base and the guy could walk back to his barracks room, or if he got in a fight, then it was just kind of taken care of locally, no charges. And I kind of digress on my soapbox on that. But the alcohol, the reason I'm going there is, how do you change this? Is you start presenting the lessons to make it okay to talk, identify the actions of someone who is in distress. In distress, I mean, whether they're depressed, isolating themselves, you see something change in their financial situation, if you know that they're getting divorced. Honestly, I think that's a big one. But if we're not teaching these things, and if we're having these commanders who are joking about, hey, I hope you're not suicidal. Well,
God,
no, sir,
I'm sorry to laugh, man. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. I get your laughter, because that's what they sound like.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why, oh, we're fine, don't worry. Why did he try to kill himself? Why did he kill himself?
And then he's going to his boss saying, "No, I asked him, and he just straight lied to me." Then, sir, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
And we get into this, do loop of, oh, we're fine. Well, why didn't he talk to me? Because you're not setting the environment that we can talk to you.
Yeah,
right.
That's a huge thing right there.
We
have an open door policy.
Trouble if you use it.
Yeah, call me when that works, okay? And I'll keep my phone on.
Hey, yeah, me too.
I've had a mixed bag with my experiences of dealing with people about this topic and my own internalization of the issues. It's never a fun position to be in, as you know. I'm not trying to minimize your story behind it too. And it's going to change eventually. But and to your point, Kevin, we still got to go to war. Yeah, we got to go to war. We're going to see nasty things. It's the pre-engagement. Here's the situation, things you got to look for, and afterwards being open to listening to it.
Yeah, and the big problem, like you're saying, being able to notice it. Me and Kevin, we got a good buddy that we weren't able to notice it. No one noticed it, and then he hit his breaking point, and we were like, "What the?" We thought he was fine. Like, how did this happen?
Obvious too.
But
after that.
no, so if no one's teaching it from the top, the leaders don't know. That means 18, 19-year-old kids coming in are going to have no idea. And now they have to learn on their own. They have to hit that rock bottom. Like I was even this morning, I was talking to my therapist, and I was talking about just alcohol. He said things that they say in AA, and I say it too, is in order to get over your alcohol, you have to hit rock bottom. That's everybody in AA has hit rock bottom. So now you got these
Yeah.
19 to 20, 23-year-olds, because at 19 to 20, you could get drinks. Everybody in the barracks has drinks. You have to hit that rock bottom
Because we
alone.
never
And
did
now,
in college.
yeah, right.
No. Y'all were over there reading the Bible in college, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
I'm
hard
sure.
studying every night.
yeah, yeah.
Calling your mom
And-
over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you then the soldier runs into that rock bottom, and it's like, well, what the hell? We're kicking you out. And then it's either their suicide in the military or their suicide after, and that's why we got the veteran suicide number and the people in service suicide number, because nobody knows what to do. No one knows. No one's teaching it because we're not talking.
Yeah, and like I said, we're seeing an incremental small change to that with organizations bringing people in. But again, where's the directive from the service chiefs? Yeah, Admiral Gilday just left from the CNO spot. I remember he made. I don't remember the details. I'm not. I could be taken to task for screwing this up, but he made a statement to the effect of, "We've got to get down to the deck plates and start understanding this." Oh, no kidding, Admiral. so here's my perspective. I remember, again, my dad was in the Navy. I have uncles in the Navy. I have family in the services. Great. My first deployment, we only had about, I call it 300 people max on that ship, maybe only 250. But I knew everybody's first name. Obviously, we didn't call everybody by that, but I knew their first name and at least one other piece of information about them, whether they had a family, where they were from, they were interested in, what their career aspiration, whatever it was. And what I've noticed through 20 years in the service, and then coming back to it as a contractor a couple of years ago, is ivory tower leadership. I'm up here. They can come to me. I'm not going to come down to them.
Mm-hmm.
It'll filter up to me if there's something wrong. Well, that's just not it. It's not what we in the Navy call deck plate leadership. The chiefs will tell the divos or come to the CMC and tell me if I'm the skipper or the CMC. They'll come tell me. Well, I personally did not really experience that. I'm sure there are commands out there that it happens, but I can't think of a time in my career where I really saw upward flow of negative information like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think of the Saving Private Ryan. They're walking through that field, and they ask Tom Hanks, like, "Hey, what do you think about this, boss?" And like, "Well, I never bitch down. I only bitch up. You bitch to me, and then I bitch up, and then I bitch up. But this
Yeah.
isn't something where, like, I can't come to my leader, and I wouldn't go to my leader and tell them that I'm having issues, because I know my leader already has enough issues to take care of. So unless you come to me and ask me, so that I know your plate isn't completely full, because that's what I see it as. Your plate's full. You don't have time to deal with me.
Well, I
What
would
can you do?
submit that's not a. If he has set or she has set that environment that you are not comfortable to come to them with a problem, that's a problem.
Yeah, there,
Because
bingo right there. Yeah.
no matter how full my plate is, if one of my sailors or soldiers has an issue, and look, I will guarantee you, I know of one guy in particular, an airman, who has told me, "Mr. Snell, I really enjoyed hanging out with you socially. I hated you as an officer because I was a hard ass. And now that I know it's a trauma response, but at no time, if one of my guys comes to me and says, Mr. Snell, I'm having a problem with my wife, my finances, my health, my whatever. If I can't take everything else off the plate to solve that problem,
Right.
maybe not 100%, but say, look, I can't help you, but I know who can, or I need you to go talk to this guy or gal, and they will get you, and I'll keep track. If they can't do that, then that's a failure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I always had issues when I first got promoted to be an NCO in the Army. I was like, the dude who was in charge of our shop when I first got there, we kind of got promoted alongside with each other. And he was always telling me, he's like, Taylor, you got to be tougher on the guys. You got to be mean and like yell on them and stuff. Like, bro, I'm sorry. That's just like, that just made me afraid of you. What
Well, there's time and
that?
place. There's time and place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin yelled at me one time.
One
all
time.
right?
One of
Yeah.
the 2 times in the Army that I yelled at someone.
Yeah, he got me pretty good.
But like
But-
that, I feel bad about that, you know. But like,
And even then though, like in that moment that I'm like, okay, no, he's serious. So if you pick your battles wisely and you yell at me at the right time, it's like, okay, no, I need to listen to this guy.
and like I
Yeah.
could explain that to Trevor, like, oh, I was just stressed about any of the
Right.
other million things I was doing. But
Yeah,
like,
but then
Yeah.
look at the relationship you guys have had since. You know,
Right.
there was a rapport that, hey, Kevin just yelled at me. Something is serious. Something is wrong. You can relate because you've had a relationship. And you know, I got underway on a U.S. Navy ship for the first time in 19 years last summer, and I saw a better rapport amongst officer and enlisted than I'd seen when I was on ships, and that was 20 years prior. Don't get me wrong, and a lot changes in that time. But and while that's true, you still have guys who are, you know, I'll say and again, I'm coming at this from an officer perspective, and mind you, it's been 8 years. There's still guys who are very, I'm an officer, they can come to me, or I'm not going to work. You know, they're down there and I'm up here. Well, that's not the way to do it.
oh,
Right.
And-
And go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. And I was just going to relate that just to the outside world too, because now that I'm working in the outside world, and I want to direct this podcast to an audience that aren't just veterans, it's normal living citizens too. At my job now, there's no talking like that. It is like that. It's exactly like that. Come to me if you have a problem. Do your job, leave me alone. And just that little ounce of leadership to where you know what's going on in my life, or you know a little bit, well, it won't just help me, it's going to help you too, because when you need something done, you could come to me and say, hey Trev, like, how's the family doing, or how's your car doing, whatever it is, and then I get to talk a little bit about it, and then you ask me, okay, would you mind doing this for me, we got this going on, and it's reciprocal. You get you get some out of it. It's not just you going out of your way, oh, I'm only making $20 an hour to hear everybody's problem. Well, first off, that's your job if you're a manager or leader. so do it. And second
Yeah.
off, it's going to help you in the long run. And it's just another thing I was talking to my therapist about today is that there is no team where I work. I don't know if it's just where I work, but or other places. By the sounds of it, it's other places too, from what my dad's telling me and all that. But there's no team. It's everybody individually just going to work, getting paid, and going home. But it would make it a lot easier if you're in a position to even move up, if you're not even that leader yet. For those listening, just talk to people, make your presence known, let people know you're here if you need me. Everyone knows they could call me on that stupid work phone, and I'll be able to go help them out. Everyone knows that they could do that.
798.
Yeah.
I think you're hitting on a key point, Trevor. I mean, the fact is, you know, we always get told as veterans we bring a special quality to the workforce. You know, leadership, drive, willingness to do things. It doesn't take a position to be a leader. It takes a person and his empathy, their relatableness. I know that's not a word, but to be able, you know, the relationships that we build, that's a leader. That's someone that you know you can go to, problem or good, you know, to help or to ask for help.
That's why I had no reservations about complaining down to the guys when I was in charge of them.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I was the first one to complain, not like about anything that would affect big shit, right? But it was like,
Yeah.
I'm a human being, bro. Like, of course I'm gonna complain to y'all about the stuff they're telling me up there, right?
Yeah. Again, there's time and place.
Yep.
You know, you don't, and you pointed out there's some things you don't vent down, but if that's your, I would submit that if that's your relationship with your coworkers, that's an issue. You've got to, from the military side, there's the horizontal and then there's the vertical.
Yeah. I
And
will
that's,
say, yeah, I think the only reason that it worked with us was because we were so good at separating that. Like, there was such a good line that we could follow. Like, I could go hang out with Trev after work, but like,
yeah,
while we're at work, we're at work. But the benefit, though, was that when he gets a speeding ticket, he comes right up to me, and then we go get our ass chewed, and then come back and go back to work.
yeah, yeah. The special operations community is unique in that regard, where you can. I remember being in Cambodia for 2 weeks, hanging out with everybody from '05 to E6, and we were partied like it was, partied like rock stars. But when we got into work the next morning, it was yes sir, no sir,
Right.
sergeant, petty officer, or chief, whatever. There's an understanding in the community that in the cryptologic community we were known for a little bit more fraternization than others, but it's an incestuous community. But so is the special operations community at the same time. But we had our fun, but we knew that once we were in the work,
Yeah.
it's done. I remember a chief petty officer decided to take me to task because I insisted he called me by my first name. I would call him the same while we were in Iraq with the special operations unit. And he wrote me up. He filed an article against me that I was fraternizing.
What?
And yes. And the answer was, the commander called me in and said, "Hey, I've got this charge against you. Kind of tell me the story." And his problem was that we were all on a first name basis in my little cell, and we're all National Security Agency guys supporting special operations community. And he wrote me up for this. And I told the commander, I said, "Look, let me tell you this. All the guys went to dinner and I got a phone call and I couldn't hang up and call them back. It was, I need the J2 right now. Lieutenant Colonel." I said, "Hey, I'll call Colonel Smith. Colonel Smith, I need you in here now." And I've got the phone here and I'm reaching out to the door, and he wouldn't answer me. He's just, I know he hears me. We're not that far away. Okay. He's just typing away. And I finally said, "F it. Joe, Dave, was that so hard? Just call me Joe. Just call me Joe." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, fine." And I told the commander that, and he's like, "Why are you being charged for this? We're done."
Yeah.
But we had that kind of rapport that we could, except with that one guy who tried to ruin it essentially for everybody, was, okay, we're going to work hard, we're going to play hard, but we're going to keep it professional. I think there's a change to some aspect of that in the Navy now. I don't know. I just know a couple of small examples I've seen. But you got to have that relationship.
Right.
You got to know who's having problems. You got to know, and not just about problems, but you got to know who's succeeding and acknowledge them. Hey, just had a kid. You did a really good job on that project. Let's reward you, even if it's just great job. That might be all you need.
Yeah, the recognition.
Yeah, and in all of this, I'm not of the belief that we will ever, the 22 a day number, whether it's higher or lower, doesn't matter to me. The fact is we have suicide in the veteran community, and we need to, and as I look back up on my screen, end suicide. I don't think we're ever going to get to zero numbers.
Right.
I think that what we have to do is set the conditions where we know we have done everything in our power without question to know that we have talked to people, given them the resources and the ability to use them effectively so that we don't have to worry about this anymore. There's always going to be somebody who, in the spur of the moment, and I mean literally, my wife leaves me, I can't live without her, I'm going to do it. Boom. And it's a
Yep.
regrettable incident, but it's not a result of decline over time into depression and suicide.
Yeah, those I think are the hardest ones. Like I was in for 8 years total, 7 years at the 160th, and I probably went to 12 to 15 funerals, right? And I would say probably 90% of them were someone taking their own life for like financial issues because that's going to get your security clearance pulled,
Yep.
stuff that like to me seemed kind of surface. Like I don't want to like denigrate them at all, whatever, but like these seem like problems that we can fix. And it's
You're
like
right.
that was the hardest part is like we have the tools to do this job, but it's just not getting done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The story I go to is Bosun Mate Chief Greenup. And that story I just relayed about, my wife is leaving me. That's based on a real guy. That was Chief Greenup. He was my chief petty officer. We had just home port shifted from Norfolk here down to Mayport, Florida. I had flown back here to get my car, and I drove back. And that night that I left and came back here, he killed himself. He took a small caliber bullet to his chest. Didn't die. Took a second shot and bled out on life flight. And it was all because his wife was leaving him. They had financially overextended themselves. She said she didn't love him anymore. He ran into their home, locked himself in the bedroom, and bang, bang, 2 shots.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that was my first experience with service related suicide, 1997, August of 1997. And it's real. I mean, and that was even well before we got into 22 a day, 9/11 or post 9/11 Iraq and Afghanistan and troubles. That was, again, the spur of the moment. To bring it back a little bit, is the spur of the moment suicide. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of. I'm more worried about the guys who are not able to talk, don't have the resources, or don't believe they've got the resources, and they don't have bring it further back to a methodology to say, what do I do to improve my mental fitness? Well, you move,
Right.
you go to therapy, you have meditation to always ground you. But why are you doing what you're doing? You may be, and again, your meaning may be short term, where I just want to get out of the service. A lot of guys are just like, I'm here to get out.
Yep.
Okay, well that's okay. You still have a job to do, and then what are you going to do beyond that? Have a short term goal, have a long term goal.
Yeah, and that's what I say too. Is like the short term goals are just as important. Like for me, I couldn't think of a long term one. I was hunting my purpose for 2.5 years, trying to figure out something. But my short term was just stay alive and just do a little bit better than I did yesterday, if not match what I did yesterday.
Yeah,
because then there is no decline. You can't go down from there.
And I think we talked last week, Trevor. I mean, your goal of a PhD in mental health issues is the greatest long term goal you can have in this topic area.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's phenomenal. How can you impact through education, but through your experiences, personal and professional, that have shown you what this life can be after mental fitness, after depression, after anxiety, whatever it is, suicidal ideations. I will tell you, I will not lie. Even, I have them very infrequently now, but as recently as 2019, I had suicidal ideations every day. I was low.
Mm-hmm.
I know I will never attempt again.
Right.
I have a 15-year-old daughter who I just adore and I love to spend time with. My family here, I love spending time with. I can't see being without that, or having them without me. Not that I'm that great a father or husband or whatever, but just to know that I'm here, in a high or a low, they know they can come to me. I will never attempt again. And I know that that's, my meaning is to set, what's my changing and focused on improving my physical and mental well-being because I want to be physically and emotionally available for my family first and foremost. That's my meaning, my big why. And then inside there, I've got my marathon, my races, my professional goals, my personal goals, whatever. It's an important aspect.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. It's still, those thoughts still just come out of nowhere. Honestly, I don't know where it starts. I don't know how it gets there, but wake up one day and they'll just be there. But
Right.
just like
But
you,
you
yeah,
have the foundation
right,
to ensure that you don't act on them.
right,
And you have an outlet to say, I had this ideation. Why did it come up? I'm going to talk to my therapist about it, or I'm going to talk to Kevin, or you can call me. I don't care. I'm happy to talk about these things and make sure that they don't become actions
yeah,
for anybody. Anybody here can call me. It's an important aspect where guys get into this isolation of, I don't know who to talk to because I haven't said, the relationships around them haven't been established. Kevin,
right,
to our point earlier, the command structure hasn't opened the door in true fashion. It's a nominal. Well, my door is always open, but you have to go through the chain of command. I get that. Go through the chain of command. Go through the chain of command. But if it fails to go through the chain of command, you can't harsh on me for having that discussion. Hey, I don't feel comfortable talking to. I don't feel comfortable talking to my department head. I'm going to go to the XO. I have to have that feeling I can. And
right,
if you don't have, and take it out of the military, if I don't have somebody at work, or I don't have somebody in my family or a friend, I mean, shoot, I don't care if it's even somebody at a bar. Not that I'm espousing drinking while depressed, but the point is you got to have somebody you can just say something to. Hey, I think I'm suicidal. I'm going to call 988. There's pluses and minuses there, but I have to have somebody I can call.
right.
You have a foundation where you know where to reach out to resources.
Well, yeah, and even during the time I was like planning on it in 2019 or 2020, one of the two, I can't remember. It was after COVID, so 2020.
2020.
But
Yeah, I was back at the house. Yeah, 2020.
yeah, but I called everybody on my list, and finally someone picked up. But if I didn't have 8 numbers instead of 5, who knows where I would have been? Like I called 5 that no one answered. I called 3 more. It's finally the last person picks up. But you just, like you said, taking it outside of the military, you still need to build that relationship with people around you. And at work, I mean, you're at work more than you're at home now.
Yeah.
Most people are at work than they are at home.
I'm
so,
not, but I work
yeah,
in my own home. So
yeah. But if you don't have that relationship at work, when something happens at work, who are you going to turn to? Who are you going to call?
Yeah.
You're at work. You can't really hop on the phone. They don't want you to hop on the phone, whatever it is. You have no one to
now
call.
We have the 988 number at least.
Right.
You have an asset, an outlet to reach out to. Whether I can go on another soapbox, and I'll just leave it at this: is whether they're tracking you or not, coming to your door or not, talk to somebody. I've heard some. I'll call horror stories of guys going, well, I called the number and then they showed up at my house and said I need to come with them. Well, I don't know veracity. I'm just, whether they're listening or not, call somebody. If that's I've gone through 7, that's my 8th, fine. Let it be, so be it. They don't have to be your first, but they got to be on the list.
Mm-hmm.
I have oh, sorry, Kevin.
And 2, we got to be the people that are on that list. Like,
right.
It's easy for us to say, okay, call someone if you have an issue. But if you don't have anyone to call, like,
yeah,
we're shooting ourselves in the foot, bro. Like, be cool with people. Like,
yeah. Don't be the asshole 99% of the time and then go, hey, I need somebody. Well, I don't want to talk to you if you're an asshole 99% of the time.
Yeah, no one's gonna pick up that phone.
Hell
yeah,
no.
You've got to have relationships that we've brought ourselves out of. I'm not going to blame, but social media has kind of put us in our own little bubbles instead of having human touch, which is very important for the mental health. The mind needs to have touch. It has to have, proximity to other humans. It's very important. And we lose that when we come out of the military, where we're kind of on our own now.
Yeah.
And if we haven't built the relationships in the service to know who we can call on the outside, then we kind of fail ourselves and our shipmates, our soldiers and friends. I've got a guy who's down in just north of Tampa, who I was in I relieved him in Soxent from NSA. And I tell you what, he and I have an agreement. Unless he's deployed, he still goes out as a civilian now. I can call him up right now and say, "Hey, Jace, I'm going to do it. I'm done. I quit. I'm ending my life." And we will stay on that phone call as he drives to here or I drive down there.
Yeah.
We have that relationship because we both know that we suffer or lived with post-traumatic stress issues. We've both gotten beyond them through our own means. And I guarantee you today, if I were to go low and call him, except with the storm coming through South Florida right now, we're in a car driving to the other.
Should I take me a boat over to your house?
Yeah. You see my point. You see the point. I mean, you've got to have human relationships beyond what did I type on my computer to somebody in an IM. Whether you're close with that person or not, I think we're losing some of that, and I'm seeing that with the number and increase in teenage ER visits for mental health issues.
Yeah.
For suicidal attempts, for suicides and I'll call it the 14, 15-year-old to 20, 25s. We're seeing that increase. And I'm kind of lumping a huge segment there, high school, college age, and beyond. But it's the same generation.
Right.
Is why I'm doing so. So we've got to get back to how do we talk to people and having that understanding, okay, this is what human interaction is.
Right. And I mean, now when I go to lunch, there's no one to talk to on lunch. Everyone's on their phone with their AirPod in.
Exactly.
There is no going to sit down and have lunch with a coworker anymore because everybody's listening or watching something. You're just on your phone too much. And then that's a lot of where the anxiety comes from. You're on your phone so much and you realize, oh, now I have to deal with the real world. Well, how do I deal with the real world? All I've seen is what's on my phone.
Yep. I've lived in my virtual world of video games or, Facebook or Instagram, and everything looks great on Instagram and Facebook. Well, the world isn't rosy and colorful for everybody's happiness to be there. Life sucks sometimes, and you got to know how to deal with these things. And having the relationship to go through it together or vent is important.
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical in a way because we're so connected with social media, but we've never been so isolated at the same time.
Yeah. And look at, we bring up COVID. I mean, why did suicide skyrocket during COVID? We pulled everybody away from everybody.
Yeah.
Go isolate yourselves. Well, I live by myself. Ooh, well, okay. Sorry.
Sorry. You want to kill grandma, bro? Get your ass in the house.
I mean, it's kind of, it was a fear mongering, and I'm not, again, another soapbox, I'll stay off, but it was the isolation is where I mean to go here. Well, that's not healthy.
Right.
Right.
They did some study over in a third world country where they took 0 to 2-year-old children, put them in a warehouse, and it was something like 70% of them died. And it's not because they couldn't play. They weren't able to talk to each other. They got sick. Still weren't able to talk to each other. They weren't able to play. The parents didn't play with them. There wasn't any toys, and they just died because humans need to play. Humans need to have that, like you said, work hard, play hard.
Life is hard. Animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And life is hard. We're working every day with life. But if you don't have that little inch of play, you're going off the deep end.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right. I mean, you got to have interaction, you got to have playtime, and at the same time, what happened during COVID? The number of bike sales went up, skyrocketed, because people had to get out,
Yeah.
and you had to do it by yourself or with your family, so you weren't too close to somebody else. Okay, well, that was a positive that I saw coming out of COVID. We see more people finding their way back to nature, if you will, outside biking. I got into running. Pools were closed. Oh God, we might, spread a disease. Well, you might spread happiness too.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's very troubling to look at those numbers through COVID. And I know, not directly, but through three of my high school friends up in the DC area, knew people, at least one each. One girl I know knew two guys who committed suicide because they were lonely. They were isolated. Well,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, that's just. I really get struck on the number of suicide, the amount of suicides we saw during COVID because of that isolation. It's very
Yeah.
troubling.
Well, how was it when you were getting out? How was your transition out of the Navy? Because I mean, 20 years in is a lot different than me spending 4.5. But
Long time, man.
yeah.
Well,
Did you have to grow up then? Is that when it started?
no. As my daughter said, even just today, I took her to the doctor's appointment earlier. She said, "You're more of a child than I am." So it's a mixed bag with my retirement. I got out because I higher tenured as an 04. I didn't make 05, so a 20-year mark is the higher tenure cutoff. So okay, I got to get out. And I told myself, hey, I'm happy with this. I'm good with it. But really, I wasn't done. I thought there was more I could do. And I wanted to go continue to play. I say play, but go work with the special operations community, do different stuff. I'd been in uniform for 24 years, 4 years of college in the ROTC program to commissioning through 20 years. I still had lots of friends who were still promoting. I've got a couple who've made flag
Oh,
officer. Okay, so
hats off to them, though. That's a big
yeah,
thing.
it's a very big thing. Not something that I could ever see in my life doing for me. I joked around about it in '98, but I didn't have the mentality for it.
Us
So it
either.
was,
Us.
yeah. So it was a little disheartening to have to get out. I made the best of it, and while that all happened, at the same time, I was still struggling with, I'm not good enough. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm not sure what to do. And, we always fall back on, and, okay, I've got my retirement. I'll get this ability eventually. But the sense of purpose, the meaning, again, really was I floated for several years. I went to work as a contractor for 4 months. And I said, okay, when I get out, I want to do project management. Okay. So my first job was really 4 months long of the CEO of the company and I had an agreement. I'm filling a billet for you as a contractor, but I'm going to be going off to interviews for these other jobs. And frankly, so that was November I left there and I went to a project management job at a hospital. Quick story. I was stressed at work. I was stressed at home. I was depressed. I wasn't functioning at the level that I expected for me, that I could perform at this high level. So that furthered my depression. And in February of 2016, I had a breakdown. I was crying. I was shaking. I was just beside myself. I wasn't suicidal, but I don't want to call it a nervous breakdown. I don't think it was. I've heard stories of nervous breakdowns. This was not. But I just broke down. I just was beside myself. And I worked at a hospital. Here's some irony for you. I worked at a hospital as an IT project manager, and I'm looking at the ER, 50 yards in front of my parking spot. And I said, I can go in there and explain for the next 45 minutes to this guy or gal, here's my history with mental health. Here's my history with stress and depression and anxiety. Or I can drive 40 minutes down to Portsmouth and they can bring up my military medical records and see my history. I drove 40 minutes to Portsmouth Medical. 5 minutes after I'm in there, they're like, okay, Mr. Snell, we got you. We know what your problems are. Gave me some medicine, got me a counselor, an appointment with therapy, and I went on my way. It was a mixed bag of emotions at that point. So I went back into therapy. Okay, well, I didn't really solve my problems. Again, I got good enough to fight. I got good enough to go back into work. And I resigned actually a couple days later it was a no notice resignation. I was professionally it was the most unprofessional thing I've done since I retired, the way I resigned. And then I kind of worked for myself for a year, but I really didn't work. I was just kind of going through the days. Got back into, by June, I got into, no, is that right? Anyway, eventually I got back into working full time. And I did it all remote. I'd fly to my client and come home Monday through Thursday. I did a startup down here for 6 months. And then I got back into full-time work. And it wasn't until COVID, again, I mean, my mind shifted through the process that I developed of, focusing on these different things and stepping through, what am I going to do to move? What am I going to do to improve my mind? And something I haven't talked about, I'd like to get into a little bit, is journaling.
Uh-oh.
That helps the mind. Meditation. I got into the Wim Hof method of breathing. Even just standing in line or sitting in a parking at a stoplight, you get stressed out or just kind of feel like, why aren't these people moving faster? Meditating and
Right.
finally having that purpose really drove me back to, I'm ready to work for myself and be successful and do what needs to be done. And that only just happened in the last 5 months, where I finally decided I'm done with this contractor world. I'm going to work for myself, and I'm going to talk about this method or methodology or whatever we want to call it, and I'm going to do some IT private investigation stuff. So it's really just been the last 5 months.
Wow.
It took me 7-8 years to really get over it.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of guys who go through that, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, 20 years, 30 years. We all go through a transition that's unique to ourselves. We have to identify the stressors so that we don't get depressed. And a lot of guys do get depressed when they resign, get out, retire, because something they've had for so long. And again, the foundation, the purpose of why do I get up and do things, it drops out from under you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you choose it or not. And what I think it was my 10-year mark, 11-year mark. My dad had always told me, look, you got 3 ways out of the military. You can choose to get out, you can die in uniform, or they can tell you to get out. But one way or another, you're getting out. It's a terminal career, no matter what. And so many of us don't want to remember that. We don't want to believe it. We think the military is everything. We don't look outside the military for validation, for support, for purpose. Man, geez, a word that keeps coming up, having purpose. That really changed my dynamic when I rechanged my mentality towards my meaning, my purpose, my why. Really changed my perspective on what am I doing when I get out of bed every morning.
Right. What keeps me going? Yeah.
Yep.
Now I had someone close to me call me and ask me what I wish I would have done when I got divorced. Like what would you do now with all those thoughts going in your head? What were the thoughts going in your head, and what would you do now with those thoughts? And the first thing I said was journaling. I would start journaling right away, because what ends up happening is you think through whatever situation you're going through, you think it through, because that's just nature. We're going to end up thinking through, oh, this sucks or this sucks or this sucks. And then you go through this whole loop, this whole thought process. Mine can go on for 2 hours if I let it. And it could just go. And then a month from then, something comes up and I go through it again. And now I'm stuck spending more time going through it when I've already solved this. I've already solved this issue and spent the time on it. The only difference is I didn't write anything down. And if I wrote it down, I would have saved 2 extra hours here by just going back, reading it, and going through it again. It's guided meditation through writing.
Yes. And there is a scientific connection between writing with your hand, the process of your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, whatever you want to think about it, and physically writing it, not typing it, not even orating it, but writing it. It's a release from here to the pen of negative emotions or whatever you're feeling. It's like you said, it's meditative in the sense that it calms the brain. It kind of, from here to here, it's kind of a release.
Right.
And that, I don't think, many people really engage that. And let's take this out of the military again. Kids. What are kids doing in school? They're handed laptops to type everything out.
Yeah.
They're not really, my daughter never learned cursive. She doesn't write a whole lot. She types a lot, or she texts a lot. But that's not the same thing as a physical, transfer through the ink to another medium in the same way that a text is.
There's no personality
So
in a typed text, though.
Right. Yeah. And then let's go off on another tangent here real quick.
Go for it.
Think about the emotions that go from a text. Hey, how you doing? Well, what does he mean by that?
Yeah.
You can't infer you can't infer what the tone is in a text. Whereas if somebody's writing really fast, I can say, oh, they were pissed or they were stressed or whatever. There's no transfer with a text of what did he mean by, the sky is blue. Oh, I just want to be pissed off at him now. Whatever. I'm making crap up.
Yeah.
But you get the point of what's said versus what's received. Text doesn't give you that. So that's not a human connection that we're talking about a little bit ago. You've got to have, even a camera, I think, is fine. Doing something like this, I can see your responses to what I've said.
Right.
That's different than a text.
Right. And that's how I started thinking about podcasting. I just started video journaling out of nowhere. I got a couple.
Great,
I only did it 2 weeks or something like that. But I was able to go back that next Sunday and read through my video journals and watch myself talk to myself and watch how I responded to my own words. And
you can see the cringe on your face when you're thinking something. Oh, geez, would I just really say that?
Oh, yeah, it is. It's, I don't know, without any outlets. And that's the thing, like you're saying, is our only outlet now. Even in New Yorkers, I want to say it's New York. They don't teach how to write anymore because they have tablets. They're writing on tablets. So you don't teach them even how to write anymore. And each person's handwriting is completely unique to their own. It's another, like Kevin's saying, it's another personality you have almost, and the way you write. And there's no more writing. You're all on your phone. You're all on your laptop. I was one out of, maybe there was 4 of us. 32 people total in my class last Tuesday. And I was one of 4 that didn't have their laptop out and didn't have whatever it was that one of 4 writing things down and having notes just right in front of me. Mostly and my whole class, half of my class is still in high school senior year, which is a little tough, but that's just what it is now.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, journaling, I was looking earlier while you were talking. I was like, okay, here's my journal. And I just realized, I have these 5-star, notebooks, spiral bound notebooks.
Yeah. 5-star, baby.
Yeah. I've gone through in 3 years, 6 or 7 of these just for my journaling. It was the first, what I noticed was It was before COVID started, or just as COVID was starting. I started in February of 2020. I would write 3 or 4 pages at a stretch each day.
Whoa.
And then I noticed, okay, that's a lot. Then it would just kind of decline over time, where I could just write, okay, here's what I was grateful for. Here's what I'm looking forward to. Here's what happened today. Just a couple of lines, but it was that sense of, okay, I've taken what I was thinking, what I did, what I felt, and I've transferred it again to paper. Now, I'll be honest with you, some of them were just absolute crap, and I've shredded a couple of them. And some things I don't want other people to read. But it was important for me to know I could go back to certain days and go, okay, I saw a change. I could watch the improvement in my mental state. The number of errors I made and scratch outs decreased because I started being able to author what I was really feeling in a better way and transfer that. And that, look, mental health is a tough topic to get through. And we need to engage people with the opportunity. And this is another, Kevin, I was mentioning earlier, another resource people just don't think about. And it's so easy to do at your own home.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what you're feeling, because waiting until you get to a therapist or you're really down, you're going to forget. I talked to one of my coaches. She's like, well, I want you to write down your thoughts on speeches or business ideas. And I'm like, but my best ideas come when I'm running.
Yeah.
I don't have the piece of paper with me, but maybe that's unique. But other people, other times where I'm out on a plane trip or something, or I was up in Annapolis this weekend. I got back to my hotel room. Well, I got to remember that idea. You're just writing it down so that, because the mind will not remember everything you thought or felt. So use paper.
Right.
You're not always going to have, even if it's a napkin at a bar, write it down and say, okay, I got to remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing I tell you, like you said, I started doing paragraphs and pages too, and writing as if I'm writing a book or something. And now it's just bullet points. And that's what I told when you asked me, I want to get someone started on journaling. That's what I'm going to tell you to do. Just whatever. Well, what do I journal about? Whatever you're thinking, whatever is going on in your mind, make a bullet point, write it down. It's gone. It's not in your mind anymore. Now it clears up more space. A new thing comes up, and that's just what it is. And then if you don't know what to write, you sit there and you think about it. I'll sit there with my journal on my lap for 10 minutes, not knowing what to write. But then it gets me to think. You're not thinking like that otherwise. I'm not thinking, all right, what do I need to write down in order to get it out of my brain? What do I want off my chest?
Yeah.
And you sit there and you think about it.
Yeah, I think having a couple of going in topics. What are you grateful for? What happened today? How did you feel when you woke up? Whatever, feel today. Having that can be the so that you're not sitting there for a period of time. You can just go, okay, I want to write down what I'm grateful for today. Well, I was grateful that I got to spend some time with my kid. But really, this is how I felt during that time. It will start to flow once you have that initial idea going in, so that you don't have somebody going, well, I don't know what to write about.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I have that. I just don't speak about it. But it's normally the top is a little summary, middle is how I felt, and the bottom is normally what's going on tomorrow, scheduling my day a little bit. So
having that resource, some of these words keep popping up in our time together here. Having a resource to know that I'm going to journal. Okay, what are you going to journal about? I'm going to journal about these topics day to day, and it'll just start to flow. And it's a much better feeling when you get it out. And then I would take my journal with me sometimes to my therapist and go, I know I need to talk to you about this, but I didn't remember. So let me scroll back in my pages and this is how I felt
every day.
And these are resources that they're simple, they're available to anybody, why not make it happen?
Yeah.
You know, even if it's right down on a napkin, write about how I felt, and then go to your laptop. I'm not a big, again, I like to write physically, but as long as you're feeling and you're thinking about these things, go ahead and type. This is for everybody else listening.
Right.
That sometimes, yeah, if that's your method, don't take my method as the end all be all. I just know that there's science behind transferring from mind to pen to paper. That act has a much higher effect and release of, I don't want to say happiness feeling, but a more positive effect on the brain physically by transferring it through ink or pencil.
It's like the thought has to exist somewhere. It's going to be
Yeah.
on the paper or it's going to be in your head.
Yeah, and there is an aspect of the motor skill thinking to writing is a piece of that science. I'll find the paper. There's a couple of papers I've read on this where there is a scientific reaction between the motor skills to writing and your thought that has a positive effect on the brain. I have to find them. I don't have them readily available.
Yeah.
There's something, but shit, you cool if I send the final question then, Trev? About an
Yeah,
hour and
man.
a half?
Send it. Final
Yes.
question.
I'm in charge of the final questions for the podcast.
Yep.
And I heard this word so many times. It's purpose. And that was our first episode. So I wanted to ask you, say I'm struggling, right? How do I find my purpose?
You got me. You
Oh,
got me thinking. You
or-
got me thinking.
That's
This
the
is why
goal.
he's in charge of it.
How?
You got me thinking.
3.
And the answer that I will come back with is resources. Another word that we've brought up several times, just in the last 10 minutes,
Okay.
is knowing where to look. Because if you just tell me to find my own purpose, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to say, oh, this is my purpose, and this is what I'm going to say it is.
Good to go.
Thanks. Thanks.
Because if it was that easy, everybody would have their purpose and know how to write it out and answer your question. What's your purpose? Oh, I know it. It would be it's too easy. But having resources and knowing where to go. And I would say this: Simon Sinek's "What's Your Why?" Just Google for a YouTube video, and he talks about finding your why. I think that's the title of the video. Find your why. There are books on it. He's written one. Simon Sinek has. There's tons of resources on the internet to say, how do I find my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my meaning? What is my why? And it's not a easy thing to do, because for a long time I thought, well, I have a purpose at work, and I have a purpose at home, and I have a purpose for my individual goals. Mm-mm. We need to think bigger. We need to think of one that applies to all three of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's a effort to walk through a process to say, this is what my purpose is. You know, I call it meaning. Simon Sinek calls it why, but purpose they're synonymous here in this case. It's a process that you have to walk through of what interests you, what's going on in your life, where do you want to be, what is your end game, what's your end state, you know, what do you want to be remembered for? Another word I hear a lot nowadays is legacy. What do you want to be known for? What do you want people to think of first when they hear your name? Okay, well, you've got to go through a concerted process again to figure that out. So to answer your question is use your resources.
Yeah.
I got it. It's a hard question to answer.
It is.
There's a reason we
It
spent
is.
a whole first episode talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember listening to it, and I will go back and listen to it again. But I think, you know, having that, you know, when I first thought about how do I visualize the 4 M's, it was a Venn diagram, kind of a 3-leaf clover of movement, mind, meditation, kind of feeding off each other. But the stem was meaning. Yeah, there we go. That's what I have now.
Oh, okay.
But the first one was a 3-leaf clover, but the stem is the meaning. And it's still here. The meaning surrounds all of it. If you don't have meaning, movement, mind, and meditation, there's really no purpose in doing them.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's foundational to the whole process of moving on beyond depression,
Oh.
anxiety.
Oops.
Uh-oh.
Y'all ignore that.
Yeah.
Oops.
I'm
Well,
glad it
blank
was
out the-
that though.
Yeah.
Blank out the last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Yo.
So it's very important to have that foundation of meaning and going through a process to figure out what your purpose is. Very important.
Yeah, I will add too. It's a process. It's not something that can happen. You know,
Yeah.
there's no answer that's going to be like, oh, okay, well, there's that. You know, it's a
Yeah.
process. Be patient.
Yep. Yeah, it was a great question, Kevin. I appreciate you making me think there.
That's what I do. That's what I do.
That's awesome.
But yeah, if you got nothing else, Dave, we
Thanks.
appreciate you coming on, man. This was incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I've talked your ears off, I'm sure. So I appreciate being on here. I really, again, it was my first time on a podcast, and it's been a lot of fun. You guys make it easy.
I wouldn't know it was your first time by listening to him. You got it.
Yeah.
You know, I told somebody recently. I was told once that I have a face for radio, and a face a face for radio, and a voice people just want to have shut up.
Yeah.
God.
Because I know I can talk and I go off on tangents, but it all comes back to got to have a reason for this all to happen.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, with that, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. We don't have a guest yet, so we'll have to get to searching. We are looking into some professors of psychology and reaching out to colleges now. So that's the goal. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Alrighty.